Welcome to the Potter Discussion.
Welcome back to the Potter Discussion. This is episode 105, and on today's episode, we will be testing our knowledge on the quotes of Harry Potter. Let's do this. Hello. Welcome back to the Potter Discussion. I'm very excited to be recording today because, number one, we have got the new microphone. If you heard the back end of last week's episode, you'll know that while I was recording, actually, I got a new microphone. The package just arrived, and I've been testing it this week, and it is fantastic. I am also using a new audio software, so I am really having to learn some new stuff. So if the audio is not what it usually sounds like, at least for this week, that is why. But I'm hoping it will sound a lot better because I was experiencing some issues in my previous microphone, and now I've graduated to this microphone and this new audio software, so I am very excited. And the third reason that I am excited to be recording today is it is a Quiz Master episode, and we haven't had a Quiz Master episode in so long, so I am thrilled that we are finally getting back to, I'd say, one of my favorite series. Of course, there aren't that many, but still, I love Quiz Master. Before we get into it, I will remind you that the two links in the show notes below are still available. The SpeakPipe page link and the Google form link. If you have anything you want to hear or say on the show, those two links are available to you. So definitely use those. It'll only take a minute of your time, and it would help me out a bunch. All right, let's get into today's episode. Excited for today because Quiz Master is different. Now we are adding a whole different set of questions for a warm-up. We have a challenge question at the end. We have so many fun things that I'm thrilled to be thinking that you are going to be enjoying them. And we're starting off with a warm-up round, a round to just get the blood flowing, figure out everything, and just get into the mindset of the quotes Quizmaster for today. So let's just get straight into those. Our warm-up round today will finish the quote. I'm going to be saying a quote, and you are going to be attempting to finish it. And yeah, that's basically it. So open your ears because we are starting right now. Now I'm going to bed before either of you get us killed. All right, this is a good one. Now, because this is the warm-up round, I will be going quickly, so I hope you have your answer because this entire quote is, "Now I'm going to bed before either of you get us killed or worse, expelled." A very famous quote. This is what Hermione said in the first year to Ron and Harry, which is, honestly, this like that one scene was exactly the dynamic of the trio, which was perfect for this scenario. So that is warm-up question number one. Now on to number two. She needs to sort out... All right, got it? This quote is actually following the previous one. So this, if you can think about the scene, hopefully you will get this quote. But this quote is... She needs to sort out her priorities. Ron said that just after Hermione, flipped her hair, turned her back after number one's quote. So that is number two. Now to the final warm-up question. Number three, we have, "You're not crazy. I can see them too." All right? So the question is, what is following this? What sentence is following that? Now, I'll give you a hint, just because it is the last warm-up question. This took place in the Order of the Phoenix. So, if you can think back in your mind, the answer is, "You're not crazy. I can see them too." you're just as sane as I am. Another really famous quote, that one was said by Luna. Oh, and another really funny one that really describes a character well. I think that was very well done. So that is the warm-up round. I hope you are warmed up. It was nice and quick, nice and short, just at your mind in the headspace of Quizmaster. But now we're getting into the real questions. Now these are going to be the questions that you really have to think, really have to piece together, and really have to wonder what it could be. So get ready, because these are going to be coming at you. You're going to have to be thinking, you're going to have to be learning, you're going to have to be wondering what's going on, you're going to have to be on your tippy toes, so to speak. So let's just do this. Okay, now in this main segment of the episode, we are going to be getting some quotes that aren't as difficult as you might be expecting, but you are going to be having to give the context of the quote and the person who said it. So, not the easiest, but if you think hard, you might be able to get it. And this first one is probably one that you're going to know immediately, but not quite know who said it. So, this is the quote. "Budge up, you great lump." Okay, that's like my fifth take of that. I couldn't stop laughing, but I guess I'm gonna have to keep going. So, "Budge up, you great lump." That is the quote, and I think, at least from what I was hearing, I think you're gonna think it is two people. Two people have the potential for this quote, and I think I can guess what those two people are. But before we do that, I am going to give you the answer. The answer is Hagrid. Hagrid said that quote to Dudley when he first saw Harry in the hut. So that's the context, that's the person, that's the answer to that question. But the other person I was thinking you might be thinking of is Moody. Mad-Eye Moody. It sounds very much like him to just be handing out books or something, and then, he asks someone to hand out rats or something to practice the defense against the dark arts on. And then when they don't move, in the first millisecond of Moody telling them to, he'll go, "Budge up, you great lump," and then they'll keep going. So that is, those are the two people that I was kind of thinking would be very fitting for that quote. But Hagrid, of course, did say that quote, which is why I suppose it's so fitting for him. But that is question number 1, and we are heading straight into question number 2, which is Hermione, no, he's not worth it. This one I have heard, so many times, of course, from watching the movies and from reading the books, but also from just people quoting it to me, because it is one of those lines that is so funny that you can just say, and that it just applies to so many situations. So this one, I think you probably are thinking about how you it's there, it's right on the tip of your tongue, and you're trying to spit it out, which is another difficult question to kind of to maneuver your way to the answer, because this is fitting for, again, multiple characters. But the answer for this one is Ron. Ron said this quote when Hermione was punching Draco in the Prisoner of Azkaban. Draco and Crabbe and Goyle. I don't know. It wasn't Crabbe and Goyle. It was Goyle, I think, and someone else. And they were watching Buckbeak getting executed. And Hermione, Ron, and Harry were marching down towards him, and Draco turned and then says, "Come to see the show," which is another famous line. And then Hermione marched up to him, pulls out her wand, and then Draco's like, "Oh, no," and he is scared. You can see it. He's terrified. And that's when Ron says, "Hermione, no, he's not worth it." But Hermione is going, You foul, awful, evil cockroach." That's another funny one. So is a whole scene, and then finally she says, "Okay, fine." Well, I shouldn't say that, but she stands back, and then Draco, oh man, that was the worst decision. Draco laughs, and then Hermione turns around and he punches him. Hermione punches Draco straight in the face, which actually wasn't scripted. She was supposed to slap him, but Emma Watson said in an interview that she got carried away in the moment and she punched him instead of a slap. So that is the context, the very funny context for question number 2. This next one for question number 3 is pretty easy. It is easy, but it is probably a very, very recognizable line, and I doubt you'll be struggling with this one. So here is the quote. Nitwit, oddment, blubber, tweak, thank you. Of course, there's no build-up for this one. Dumbledore said this quote in the Order... Not the Order of the Phoenix. I was going to say the Order of the Phoenix. He did not say it in the Order of the Phoenix. Dumbledore said this quote in the Sorcerer's Stone and the Philosopher's Stone, the very first book, when Harry got to the Gryffindor table. He sat down, and then Dumbledore made a speech. He said, before we dig into our delicious feast, I would like to say a few words, and here they are. Which is a perfect introduction to Dumbledore's character. And then Harry's like, is he crazy? And then Percy's like, no, he's brilliant, but yeah, he's a bit crazy. So that was a very funny interaction, and especially with with Dumbledore just standing up there and then saying it, and then everyone clapped too. Everyone was like, yeah, ooh, that was great, that was fantastic, which is another like just hilarious thing of Hogwarts. And the teachers, even the teachers, I thought it was so funny. They were like, "Oh man, that was beautiful. That speech, oof." It's just so random and so weird. Like, why those words? Well, actually, I did answer that question, but just in a comedic sense, why those? Like, why did Dumbledore choose that? Why did Dumbledore choose those words to say? And again, we did answer that question, but still, I mean, crazy. Nitwit, oddment, blubber, tweak. And like, was he preparing that? Were those words that he was like thinking of beforehand? I mean, what was going on? Was he thinking to himself, oh yeah, I'm gonna say those words and everyone's gonna love it? Or maybe it was just as part of like a plan Dumbledore was throwing out, I don't know. But something was going on there. Maybe Dumbledore just had a random urge. He just wanted to say that one thing. Okay, in the context of Dumbledore, that makes sense. It makes sense that Dumbledore would just say the most random thing and just leave everyone just going like, what is he thinking? Like, what's happening? So that is kind of what I imagine Dumbledore kind of just thinking of, like making this whole speech plan, and then just at the last, like right when he's sitting down, right when they're preparing for the students to come into the hall, he just goes, you know what? I don't want to say that. You know what I want to say? I want to say nitwit, oddments, blubber, tweak. That is my goal in life. I mean, ridiculous, hilarious, whatever you want to call it. That is question number 3. For question number 4, we have a quote that is very recognizable, and I call it the pin quote. I call it the pin quote because I see this quote on pins, on badges, because it is so short and it's just one word. And this quote, I bet you're gonna get in a second. You're either gonna never get it or get it in, with like the first letter. So the quote is always. That's it. That's the quote. If you can get it, that is pretty impressive. The context for this quote, I'm not giving you the answer, but it is a very powerful context. It's very meaningful the way this is spoken. It really reveals a lot about the character who says it, and it has a very, very distinct aura around this quote. You will understand the meaning of this without even having to know who said it. Well, I mean, without having to know why they said it. You will automatically know if you know the context, if you know the characters involved. I mean, that's it. You know exactly what's going on. And I know I am keeping you in just so much suspense, so I will end your pain and tell you the answer. The answer is Snape. Severus Snape said this quote, and let me say, it was very, very powerful. He was casting the Patronus. His Patronus for Dumbledore, and he was waving his wand. He was going, expecto. You know that? Okay, so a side note, I'm sorry to interrupt this question, but a bit of a tangent. Where are these whisperers coming from? There's so many like whisperers. I don't know what do you call it? So Grindelwald, I would say, is the biggest whisperer, and he talks in a whisper. You know, the impressions episode. So that that was the one he whispered, and then also with Credence, he like just like has a random wand up his sleeve that just gives to Credence. I mean, that was funny. And also Dumbledore occasionally is kind of a whisperer, only when he's talking about very like serious things, you know, Harry, like just with Harry. And funnily enough, I also noticed that Voldemort is also a bit of a whisper kind of talker, because, you know, when he's kind of like brandishing his wand, or especially when I was noticing in the scenes where he's like won some kind of battle, he's won some kind of whatever, and he's like gloating his victory, you know, in the Order of the Phoenix, when Harry was like on the ground after like being possessed by Voldemort. Voldemort leaned over Harry and was like, "You're a fool, Harry Potter, and you will lose." That wasn't literally whispering, but for our standards, I think that counts as a whisper, just because he was whispering and he was not whispering, let's just put it that way, but he was very, you know, kind of like mystical and magical and you know, that kind of thing. But okay, tangent over and question over, and I think that is that. On to the next question. This next quote was said by a very intelligent, matter-of-fact, down-to-earth person who believes in the fact of magic and not the mystical magical arts of some other branches of magic. And this quote is, "Tell me, which one of you will be dying this year?" Oh boy, this is another one of those where you either get it in a second or you're never going to get it. And I think this one, most people are going to get it in a second, because this quote was said by Professor McGonagall in the third book after their first lesson in divination. So Professor Trelawney predicted that Harry would die. And then they went to Transfiguration, and everyone was always looking back at Harry. And then McGonagall, you know, transformed into a cat, and she was like, not that it matters, but that was the first time I haven't gotten applause from a class. And, you know, everyone was so confused, you know, what was going on with Harry, you know, what was happening. And that was a really interesting scene. And that's when McGonagall said that line. And those scenes with McGonagall kind of like disproving Trelawney, or someone else said, I think it's a very healthy scene to have, if you kind of know what I mean, because it's important to understand the different branches of magic, of course, for the wizards and witches at Hogwarts, but also for us as the readers, because if we don't have a good idea of what's going on in the story, we will never know, all the struggles of the characters and, you know, their needs and wants for like completing homework assignments and doing things like that. So it's definitely a big struggle, I think, with Joe trying to figure out like how to make the story in such a way that we understand the magic as the readers, how we can understand how the characters can understand magic as a whole in all the different branches and classes. So that is a big challenge in my eyes of writing process of Harry Potter, at least for what I saw. But I think in this scene, this was one of those scenes that really helped out that issue. And now we have a very fun question, one that I think will be very interesting to answer, and one that comes up very often in the story. And that quote is, "Potter." That was my best one, okay? That was my best one. Potter. Potter. Kind of sounds like you're dying almost. But anyway, that is the quote. And I don't know. It is a very, very difficult one. Very obscure, very different. I don't know how well we're going to be able to figure this one out. So it will be a challenge, but I'm hoping that we can really work through this one and figure it out. I'm kidding, of course. This is glaringly obvious, and I think something that we should... This is one that really pops up everywhere. That is great. And, I mean, I think we all know the answer to this one. Draco Malfoy. This is one of his favorite things to say. The context is basically every book, Draco is always going, Potter, 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 Potter this, Potter that, do this for me, Potter, ah. You know, I'm sure, I'm saying again, impressions episode, I am going to do that next episode. Well, no, I have a different plan. Okay, 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, episode 107 will be impressions episode. And if you're listening to this episode in the future, and episode 107 is already out, make sure you listen to that, because it's gonna be an impressions episode, okay? That's my promise. Impressions episode 107. It's going down. It's going down, where I can show you my skills of saying Potter, and that serious sound of that was like you know. Yeah, okay. This is not the impression episode. This is a question. So, the Potter. I will not say it again. Let's just call it the Potter. So, the Potter. Draco says the Potter very often, and I think that is a very good kind of view into his character, the ferocity of which he says Harry's name. And I think that is very closely kind of related to his feelings towards Harry. He isn't like, oh, Harry Potter. It's like really intense and really up in his face, and just like loud and sharp. And I think that is how Draco really sees his feelings towards Harry. And I think that's mostly because, of course, Draco doesn't like Harry. And if Draco doesn't like Harry, he shouldn't say his name, really softly and just like, So that, I think, is kind of the face value of why Draco says Potter like that. But I was also thinking about Tom Felton, Draco's actor, and how he kind of developed that, and why he thought that was a good option for Draco's character. Now, of course, I didn't do any research, because I don't think there's an article about the Potter. But, I mean, if there is, please send it to me. I would love to read that. But Draco, Tom Felton as Draco, needed some kind of trademark thing. He needed something to say, something to do, and I think I can imagine him kind of playing around with different things to just do. And eventually, he saw his Potter as the thing that he should do, because I think that was already written into Draco's character, and I think that was already something that he was planning to do as a person. And although that is not kind of, a big part of the story, no, the Potter's not a big part of the story, I think Tom Felton really saw that as his way to express his take on Draco, and really show everyone that was really who he thought Draco was, which is another very good reason for the Potter to be such a ferocious thing, because Draco himself is a ferocious being, and, well, at least in terms of his feelings towards Harry, which I think is okay. There has to be the villain, there has to be someone like that, and Draco is just the person that fills that role. So that is this question. I think we have one question to go before our challenge question. And that question is, it's him. He's the dog. He's an animagus. So, this question in particular, I think, is very easy to solve. And I am pretty sure that you, on your run, walk, drive, listen, sit down, cooking, doing cleaning, whatever, I bet you already know what this answer is. And the answer is Ron. Ron says his quote in The Prisoner of Azkaban when he's dragged down the Whomping Willows and into the Shrieking Shack. When Harry and Hermione get there, they see Ron on the bed. They rush in. Sirius closes the door, and then Ron is, it's him. He's a dog. He's an animagus. But I chose this question mostly to talk about the context. Of course, the context is Ron gets dragged down the hole and he is put on the bed, and then, Sirius is kind of revealed. But I want to talk about Sirius and this scene being his scene to be revealed. So, first off, I think this was not a very good scene to kind of introduce Sirius. In the book, I think it was a good scene because we were kind of led to believe in this scene that Sirius was this whole madman, mass murderer, and he really was the man that everyone thought he was. But in the movie, he was really portrayed as this hardened criminal, and he wasn't, seen as this nice guy. And it was difficult, and I can see that the movie really struggled with this in kind of portraying Harry's building trust for Sirius, because in the book they could just say his inner monologue and all that kind of thing, so that was easy. But in the movie it was difficult because Sirius was the same criminal that everyone thought he was, and the movie had to somehow disprove that fact. And how could they possibly do that? But I think in addition to that, I think they really put him in a bad light, because they, when Lupin came in and then picked him up, that was a whole different situation. And I think, again, in the book, that works because we could hear Harry's inner monologue, and there are different lines that really helped along that kind of, element for the story. But in the movie, we didn't get that because we couldn't hear what Harry was thinking. We couldn't hear what Hermione was thinking. We couldn't hear what Ron was thinking. We couldn't even see what they were thinking. And the same goes for Sirius and Lupin. When Lupin entered and they were kind of, they were embracing and, kind of greeting each other after so long, I think it was clear that they were friends. It was clear that they knew each other, and it was clear that they trusted each other. But if anything, all that did was alert us to the fact that Lupin was the criminal and not that Sirius was the good guy. And that, I think, is where this scene kind of went wrong, because we never saw the true side of both Lupin and Sirius. We just saw we saw their worst sides, and we hated them all the more for it, simply because we didn't see that they were kind of trusting each other, because they knew that they were the good guys, that they knew that Peter Pettigrew was the evil one. And I think that's where this scene really fell short. And now it is time for the challenge question. The question that I've added at the very end of this episode to give you, surprise, surprise, a challenge. And this one I will not answer on the show. You will be answering this question and sending me your answers via the SpeakPipe page, via the Google form, via email, via any way you want. And it's just to see if you got it right. And next week, I will be telling you the answer. And this is basically the end of the episode because there's nothing to talk about, because I will not be giving you the answer. But the challenge quote for this week is, "And I'll be wanting a pay raise." That's it. I said it's so serious, so that should alert you to the fact that I am serious. So, that is the challenge quote. If you can get the character, the context, and perhaps what comes after it for bonus points, you will have gotten the answer correct. And next week, at the very beginning of the episode, I will be telling you the answer to this question just to see if you got it right. And even if you don't submit to the show, you can still be playing along, because that is really what makes it fun. But that's it. That's this episode. I hope you enjoyed this new format of Quizmaster. but it is my hope that you will send feedback if you don't, and send feedback if you do. But that's it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. It really means the world to me that you chose to spend these 30 minutes with me. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed these Quizmaster episodes. If you like these Quizmaster episodes, please let me know. Please leave a review on the show. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't, so I can make this show a much better thing to listen to. And as always, use this information to your advantage, and I will see you later.
This was the Potter Discussion.